You need someone who can love you the way you deserve, Stones said quietly, knowing he'd crossed every line. Lauren stared at him through bruised eyes. She had no idea that this moment would lead to federal raids, divorce papers, a new state, and finally, a man whose hands held flowers instead of fists. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. The Oklahoma sun beat down mercilessly on the black Escalade as Stone's Trippier pulled through the iron gates of the Brown estate. 6 months into this assignment and he still wasn't used to the sheer excess of Maple Ridge, Tulsa's playground for oil money and old wealth. The mansion loomed ahead, all limestone and glass, looking more like a resort than a home. He'd seen plenty in his 34 years, but nothing quite prepared you for watching a monster play family man. Stones cut the engine and checked his watch. 7:15 a.m., Derek Brown would emerge at 7:30 sharp like clockwork. The man ran his entire life on a schedule, legitimate petroleum business by day, drug empire by night, perfect family man on Sundays. Stones had to admit, the 53-year-old had built one hell of a cover story. His phone buzzed, a text from his DEA handler, any movement on the Thursday shipment. Not yet, Stones typed back, then deleted it. He'd learned early in this game that even encrypted messages left trails. He pocketed the phone and stepped out into the heat. The garage door was already open. Lauren Brown stood there in a cream linen dress, directing 2 landscapers toward the rose garden. Even from 30 feet away, Stones could see the careful way she held her left arm against her body. He'd seen that protective posture before, last Tuesday, after he'd heard Derek's raised voice echoing from the master bedroom at 2 in the morning. She looked up and caught his eye, smiled that practiced smile wealthy women perfected for hired help, but her eyes, those told a different story entirely. "Good morning, Stones," she called out, voice bright as polished silver. "Derek will be down shortly. Can I get you some coffee, sweet tea?" "I'm fine, ma'am, thank you." She nodded and turned back to the landscapers, and Stones noticed the foundation makeup, expertly applied, couldn't quite hide the yellowing bruise along her jawline. His hands tightened into fists before he caught himself. Not his mission, not his business. He was here for Derek Brown's drug operation, not his domestic situation. The DEA had been tracking Derek for 18 months before Stones went undercover. On paper, the man was untouchable, petroleum engineer with contracts across 3 states, deacon at Crossroads Fellowship Church, donor to half the charity boards in Tulsa. But the numbers didn't add up. His legitimate businesses couldn't account for the properties, the cars, the lifestyle. Then a confidential informant dropped a name during a fentanyl bust in Oklahoma City. Derek Brown, the pipeline king who actually ran pipelines, just not the kind that transported crude oil. The front door swung open and 16-year-old Mavis emerged, backpack slung over one shoulder, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She had her mother's delicate features but her father's calculating eyes. Behind her, 13-year-old Kellen shuffled out, headphones covering his ears, lost in whatever world teenagers escaped to. Neither kid looked at their mother as they passed her. Lauren's smile faltered for just a second before she caught it, rebuilt it, sent them off with a wave they didn't return. Stones watched her shoulders drop the moment they disappeared around the corner toward the bus stop. She pressed her fingers to her temples, took a breath that looked like it hurt, then straightened up and walked back into the house. The woman was drowning in plain sight. "Stones," Derek's voice boomed from the doorway. "Let's move. I've got a meeting at the Greenwood site in 40 minutes and traffic's going to be hell." Stones turned. Derek Brown filled the doorframe, 6'2", built like he still played college football, silver threading through his close-cropped hair. Custom suit, Rolex catching the morning light, cologne that probably cost more than Stones's monthly rent at his actual apartment across town. The man looked like success incarnate. Stones knew better. He'd spent 6 months watching this man operate, and Derek Brown was a sociopath wrapped in expensive fabric. "Yes, sir," Stones said, opening the rear door. "GPS says 32 minutes to Greenwood." Derek slid in without acknowledgement. Stones had learned quickly that to Derek Brown, drivers were furniture that occasionally spoke. It made the surveillance easier. Invisible people heard everything. As Stones pulled out of the circular driveway, he caught a glimpse of Lauren in an upstairs window. She stood perfectly still, watching the Escalade disappear through the gates. Her hand rested against the glass like she might push through it, might run after them, might scream. But she didn't move, just watched until they turned onto the street. "Stop at Starbucks on 71st, Derek said, already on his phone. "The one by Whole Foods." Stones adjusted the route. In the rearview mirror, he watched Derek's face transform as he spoke into his phone. The church deacon vanished. Something colder emerged. "Thursday," Derek said quietly. "Same protocol as the Ardmore shipment, but I want double the usual security on the tankers. Too much money riding on this to have any mistakes." Stones kept his eyes on the road, but his mind cataloged every word. Thursday, tankers, Ardmore protocol. The pieces were coming together, but they needed hard evidence, dates, locations, quantities, the kind of evidence that stood up in federal court. "And Marcus," Derek continued, his voice dropping even lower, "if your guy screws this up like he did in Lawton, I don't care whose cousin he is. Make an example, we clear." A pause, then Derek laughed, cold and sharp. "Good, because I've got too much invested to let some amateur hour operation bring heat down on us." He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Business as usual for Derek Brown, juggling his criminal empire between meetings with city councilmen and church committees. Stones pulled into the Starbucks drive-thru, maintaining the blank expression he'd perfected over 6 months. Inside, though, his pulse quickened. Thursday was 3 days away. Whatever was coming was big enough to make Derek nervous. And Derek Brown never got nervous. As they waited in line, Stones's eyes drifted to his own reflection in the side mirror. He barely recognized himself anymore, the accommodating driver, the invisible help, the man who watched terrible things and did nothing. This deep cover work required you to bury yourself so completely that sometimes you forgot which version was real. But every time he saw Lauren Brown's careful smile and broken eyes, something in him remembered. Remembered why he joined the DEA in the first place. Remembered that behind every case file were real people being destroyed by men like Derek Brown. 3 more days until Thursday, 3 more days of playing the part. Then maybe, finally, they'd have enough to bring this whole house of cards crashing down. This story wasn't made for clicks, it was made with heart. I was told that wouldn't be enough to reach even 2,000 subscribers. Maybe that's true in today's world. Unless people like you choose to support stories that actually mean something. The Greenwood Petroleum Facility sprawled across 15 acres of industrial wasteland on Tulsa's north side. Stones had driven Derek here at least 20 times in 6 months, and each visit followed the same pattern: legitimate business up front, coded conversations in the back offices. Today felt different though. Derek had that edge to him, the kind that made everyone around him walk on eggshells. Stones parked near the main office and watched Derek disappear inside with 3 men in hard hats and high-visibility vests. Through the tinted windows, he could see handshakes, clipboards being passed around, the performance of normal business dealings. His phone vibrated, another message from his handler: "Need confirmation on Thursday's location, running out of time." Stones stared at the message. They'd been building this case for 18 months, and somehow Derek always stayed one step ahead. The man was paranoid, careful, and smart enough to keep his drug operation completely separate from his petroleum business. Except for the tanker trucks, those trucks were the connection they needed. Movement caught his eye. Derek emerged from the office with a shorter man, early 40s, expensive boots, the kind of swagger that came from new money. They walked toward the back of the facility, away from the main buildings, toward a row of tanker trucks being loaded. Stones grabbed his phone and pretended to scroll while actually switching on the camera. Zoom lens, silent shutter, geotagging enabled. Every photo was evidence, every frame a potential piece of the puzzle. The 2 men stopped beside a gleaming silver tanker. Derek ran his hand along the tank's surface, nodding as the shorter man spoke. Then Derek pulled out his phone, showed the other man something on the screen, and they both laughed. Stones captured it all: faces, vehicle numbers, timestamps. 40 minutes later, they were back on the road, heading toward downtown Tulsa. Derek was in a better mood now, whistling some tune Stones didn't recognize. Whatever he'd confirmed at the facility had pleased him. "Take me to the Petroleum Club," Derek said. "Lunch meeting with the Energy Council Board should be about 2 hours." "Yes, sir." The Petroleum Club sat atop the Mid-Continent Tower, all old money and older traditions. Stones had learned quickly that Tulsa's elite conducted their real business over steaks and scotch, handshake deals that moved millions without a single contract. He pulled up to the entrance and Derek stepped out without a word, already on his phone again. Stones watched him disappear into the building, then drove to the nearby parking structure to wait. 2 hours, enough time to file his report and maybe grab lunch himself. But as he pulled into a parking spot, his phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Stones," he answered carefully. "Mr. Trippier," a woman's voice hesitant. "This is Lauren Brown. I hope I'm not disturbing you." His pulse kicked up. In 6 months, Lauren had never called him directly. "No ma'am, not at all. Is everything all right?" A long pause. He could hear her breathing, could almost feel her gathering courage. "I was wondering if you might be available this afternoon. Around 3 o'clock, I need someone to drive me to my old boutique in Cherry Street. It's been closed for a while and I'd like to check on it." Stones checked his watch. Derek's lunch meeting would run until 2:30 at least. "Yes ma'am, I can do that. Shall I pick you up at the house?" "Please, and Stones, don't mention this to Derek. He doesn't like when I go there." The line went dead before he could respond. Stones sat in the parking structure, staring at his phone. This wasn't part of the assignment. Getting involved with Derek's family situation could compromise everything. But something in Lauren's voice, that careful tremor, that practiced politeness masking desperation, made him think of every woman he'd ever failed to help. His mother, his sister, the girlfriend in college who'd needed him to see what he was too young to understand. He started the engine. Sometimes the job required you to maintain cover, and sometimes maintaining cover meant being human. At 3 o'clock sharp, Stones pulled up to the Brown mansion. Lauren emerged in dark jeans and a simple white blouse, the most casual he'd ever seen her. No jewelry except her wedding ring, which she twisted nervously as she approached the car. "Thank you for doing this," she said quietly as she slid into the back seat. "Of course, ma'am." They drove in silence through Maple Ridge, past mansions that looked like museums, onto the highway toward downtown. Lauren stared out the window like she was seeing the city for the first time in years. "It's on Cherry Street," she said finally, "between 16th and 17th, a little boutique called Lauren and Lace." Stones knew the area: trendy shops, coffee houses, the kind of neighborhood where young professionals spent their weekends. "How long has it been closed?" Another pause. 3 years, almost 4 now. He wanted to ask why, but the answer sat in the tension of her shoulders, the way her fingers worried that wedding ring. The boutique appeared between a vintage record shop and a juice bar. The windows were covered with brown paper and a faded "For Lease" sign hung crooked in the door. Lauren stared at it like it might disappear if she looked away. "Would you like me to wait here?" Stones asked. Would you mind coming in? I don't think I can face it alone." He shouldn't. Every instinct screamed that this was crossing a line, but he opened his door anyway. The boutique smelled of dust and lost dreams. Sheets covered what had once been display racks. Boxes lined the walls, filled with fabric samples and design sketches. In the back corner sat a desk buried under papers, and above it hung a photograph, a younger Lauren cutting a ribbon at the grand opening, surrounded by friends, her smile genuine and bright. "I was good at this," Lauren said softly, running her fingers over a bolt of silk. "Really good. Won a regional design award my first year, had clients from Oklahoma City, even Dallas." She picked up a sketch from the desk, an elegant evening gown, the kind of thing you'd see on a red carpet. "Then Derek said I was neglecting the children, neglecting him, that a wife's place was supporting her husband's career, not chasing her own vanity projects." Her voice remained steady but her hands shook. So I closed it just like that, walked away from everything I'd built. Stones watched her move through the space like a ghost haunting her own past. This was the woman Derek Brown had systematically destroyed, creative, talented, full of light. He'd taken that light and snuffed it out one criticism at a time. Mrs. Brown. Lauren, she interrupted. Please, just Lauren, I'm so tired of being Mrs. Brown. She turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd met her, the careful mask had fallen away. No practiced smile, no perfect composure, just exhaustion and something that looked like the beginning of anger. Do you think it's too late, she asked, to start over, to be that person again? Stones thought about all the things he couldn't say. About the case, the investigation, the fact that in 3 days her entire world might explode. About the fact that he wasn't really a driver at all. Instead, he told her the only truth that mattered. It's never too late to remember who you are. Wednesday evening arrived with the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer. Stones had spent the day following Derek to 3 different locations, a bank in Broken Arrow, a construction site near Wasso, and finally back to the Greenwood facility where everything was being set up for tomorrow's mysterious shipment. Derek had been on edge all day, snapping at everyone, checking his phone every few minutes. Whatever was coming tomorrow was big enough to make even him nervous. Now, as Stones pulled the Escalade through the mansion gates at 6:30 p.m., he could see the tension waiting at home too. The windows glowed warm in the dusk, but Stones had learned that light didn't always mean warmth in the Brown household. Derek's phone rang before they'd even stopped. He answered with a bark, "What now?" Stones watched in the rearview mirror as Derek's face darkened. I don't care what his excuse is, if those trucks aren't ready by 4 a.m., he can explain it to Marcus, permanently. He ended the call and threw the phone onto the seat beside him. Incompetent idiots, every single one of them. The car hadn't even fully stopped before Derek was out and storming toward the house. Stones could already hear the raised voice before the front door slammed shut. He should have left then, driven the Escalade to the garage, locked it up, headed back to his studio apartment on the east side. Filed his report, confirmed the Thursday timeline with his handler, prepared for what would hopefully be the final phase of this operation. But something made him stay. Maybe it was the curtain that twitched in the upstairs window. Maybe it was the muffled shout that carried across the lawn. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The front door opened and Lauren emerged, moving quickly, her purse clutched against her chest. She wore sunglasses despite the fading light. Stones stepped out of the car. Mrs. Brown. I need you to take me to sir, she said, her voice too bright, too controlled. The one on 71st, I just need to pick up a few things for dinner. Of course, ma'am. She slid into the back seat and Stones noticed how carefully she moved, like everything hurt. He pulled out of the driveway without comment, but his jaw tightened. They drove in silence. Lauren stared out the window, those sunglasses hiding whatever was happening behind them. Her left hand gripped her purse so hard her knuckles had gone white. At a red light on 71st Street, Stones adjusted the rearview mirror, just a small movement but enough to see her reflection properly. That's when he saw it. The sunglasses had slipped slightly, and beneath them her right eye was swollen, the skin around it already purpling into a nasty bruise. Something in him cracked. He'd spent 6 months watching, documenting, playing his part. 6 months of being invisible, of not intervening, of telling himself the mission was more important than any individual suffering. He justified it all with the greater good. Taking down Derek's entire operation would save hundreds, maybe thousands of lives from the poison he distributed. But right now in this car at this red light, none of that mattered. Because right now there was just a woman who'd had her dreams crushed, her spirit broken, her face bruised, and nobody to tell her the truth. The words came out before he could stop them, before training and protocol and career could silence what needed to be said. Mrs. Brown, his voice was quiet but steady. Ma'am, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you deserve someone better. Someone who knows your value and can love you the way you deserve to be loved. The silence that followed felt like the air before a thunderstorm. Lauren didn't move, didn't speak. just sat there frozen, those sunglasses pointed straight ahead. The light turned green. Stones drove, his heart hammering, immediately regretting every word. He'd just compromised his cover, crossed every professional line, potentially destroyed 18 months of investigation because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. They pulled into the Reese's parking lot. Stones put the car in park and waited for her to fire him to call Derek to end everything right here. Instead, Lauren slowly removed her sunglasses. Her eyes, one swollen, one clear, met his in the rearview mirror. "Thank you, Stones," she whispered. Then she was gone, disappearing into the store before he could respond. He sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching the automatic doors close behind her. What had he just done? 20 minutes later, Lauren emerged with 2 small bags. She didn't put the sunglasses back on, just climbed into the back seat and said, "Home, please." The drive back was silent but different somehow. Like something had shifted in the air between them, some unspoken understanding that couldn't be taken back. When they pulled up to the mansion, Lauren gathered her bags but didn't immediately exit. "Stones." "Yes, ma'am." "Those words you said, I'm going to think about them." Then she was gone, walking toward the house with her shoulders just a little bit straighter than before. Stones drove the Escalade to the garage and locked it up. His hands were still shaking. In his car, his actual car, the beat-up Honda Civic he drove when he wasn't playing chauffeur, he sat in the darkness and called his handler. "Morrison," his handler answered. "It's Trippier, Thursday's confirmed, 4 a.m. at the Greenwood facility, multiple tankers, Derek's running scared about something, which means it's big. Good work, we'll have teams in position by 3 a.m., this time tomorrow we'll finally have him." "Yeah," Stone said, but he wasn't thinking about Derek anymore. He was thinking about Lauren, about the way she'd looked at him in that rearview mirror, about words that once spoken couldn't be unspoken. Morrison must have heard something in his voice. "You okay, Trippier?" "Fine, just ready for this to be over." He ended the call and drove back to his apartment, but sleep wouldn't come. He kept seeing Lauren's face, kept hearing the quiet strength in her voice when she said she'd think about his words. Across town, in the master bedroom of the Brown mansion, Lauren lay awake beside her sleeping husband. The bruise around her eye throbbed, but she barely noticed it. Her mind was spinning, replaying those words over and over. "You deserve someone better." Such simple words. She'd heard variations before from her mother, from old friends before Derek had isolated her from them. But somehow, hearing them from Stones, this quiet man who saw everything and said nothing until tonight when he'd said everything, made them feel different. Made them feel true. She turned to look at Derek, snoring beside her, one arm thrown possessively across her side of the bed even in sleep. This man who'd promised her the world and then made that world so small she'd forgotten there was anything beyond these walls. The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. In a little over an hour, Derek would wake up for whatever business had him so agitated. He'd leave and the house would be quiet, and Lauren would have time to think. Time to remember who she used to be, time to imagine who she might become. "You deserve someone better." The words settled into her bones like a truth she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. And somewhere in the darkness before dawn, Lauren Brown made a decision. Sometimes the smallest words carry the heaviest weight. If this story is reminding you that someone in your life deserves to hear they matter, don't let this be just another video you scroll past. Hit like and subscribe to this channel so you never miss these moments that might change everything. Thursday morning came with sirens. Stones wasn't there to see it. He'd been pulled off chauffeur duty at 3 a.m. to brief the tactical teams. But his phone lit up with updates every few minutes. Federal agents, DEA, local police, they'd moved in at 4:15 a.m. just as the tanker trucks were being loaded with their hidden cargo. Derek Brown had been caught red-handed with enough fentanyl to supply half the state. The arrest was clean, professional, devastating. No shots fired. No chase, just handcuffs and Miranda rights and the slow destruction of a carefully built lie. By 7 a.m., it was all over the news. Prominent Tulsa businessman arrested in major drug bust. Derek's face plastered across every channel, that confident smile from last year's charity gala now looking sinister in hindsight. Stone sat in the DEA field office filling out paperwork, giving statements, watching his phone. He was waiting for a call from Lauren, though he knew it wouldn't come. She'd be dealing with federal agents herself right now, answering questions about what she knew and when she knew it. He hoped she'd remember what he'd told her, that she deserved better, even if better meant the complete destruction of her life as she knew it. 3 days later, Stone stood outside Family and Children's Services on East 31st Street. He shouldn't have been there. The case was closed, his cover was blown, and he'd been reassigned to desk duty until the trial preparation began. But he'd been driving past when he saw her. Lauren, walking out of the building with a woman in a purple blazer, obviously a therapist or counselor. They stood on the sidewalk talking, and for the first time since he'd known her, Lauren wasn't performing. Her face was bare of makeup, the bruise around her eye fully visible in the morning sun. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt. She looked free. The therapist touched her arm, said something that made Lauren nod, then disappeared back into the building. Lauren stood there for a moment, taking deep breaths, before she noticed the Honda Civic parked across the street. Notice Stone's watching. She crossed the street without hesitation, and he rolled down his window. "DEA, huh?" she said, but there was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion and something that might have been relief. "I figured it was something like that. Real drivers don't notice the things you noticed. I'm sorry I lied to you." "Don't be." Lauren leaned against his car, looking back at the counseling center. "If you'd told me the truth 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed you, about Derek, about any of it. I was too far gone." "You're seeing someone, a therapist?" She nodded. "Dr. Simone Twist, specializes in trauma and abuse recovery. The federal agents recommended her when they were questioning me. Turns out, proving you're a victim and not an accomplice requires a lot of documentation." The bitterness in that last sentence cut deep. "They're not charging you with anything," Stone said. It wasn't a question. He'd made sure of that himself, spent hours explaining to the prosecutors that Lauren had been as much a victim as anyone Derek had sold drugs to. "No, they believe I knew nothing." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. 16 years of marriage and I was so controlled, so isolated that I literally had no idea my husband was a drug trafficker. I don't know if that makes me innocent or just pathetic. It makes you a survivor." Lauren looked at him, then really looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. "Those words you said in the car, do you remember?" "Every single one. I haven't stopped thinking about them." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Dr. Twist asked me what made me finally decide to get help. I told her about you, about that moment at the red light. She said sometimes we need permission from someone else before we can give it to ourselves." A car honked behind them, annoyed at the Honda blocking part of the street. Stones pulled into a nearby parking lot and Lauren followed on foot. When she reached his car again, she pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. A list of tasks, half of them checked off. "My homework from therapy," she explained. "Find a lawyer, open my own bank account. Call my mother for the first time in 2 years, visit Mavis's school counselor, start the divorce paperwork." Stone scanned the list. Every item was a step toward independence, toward reclaiming a life. "How are your kids handling everything?" Lauren's expression clouded. "Mavis is angry at her father, at me for not leaving sooner, at the world. She's in counseling too. Kellen just shut down completely. He won't talk about it, won't talk to me, just goes to school, comes home, locks himself in his room. That's normal for what they're going through. I know. Dr. Twist keeps reminding me that healing isn't linear. Some days I wake up and feel strong, like I can handle anything. Other days I can barely get out of bed." She paused. "But I'm still getting out of bed. That's progress, right?" "That's everything." They stood there in the parking lot, two people connected by circumstances neither had planned for. Stones knew he should leave, should let her heal without the complication of the man who'd brought her world crashing down. But something made him ask. "The boutique, Lauren and Lace, are you thinking about reopening it?" Her face transformed. Just for a moment, he saw the woman from that photograph on the wall, the one cutting the ribbon, surrounded by friends, genuinely happy. I went back there yesterday, just sat in the space for an hour looking at all my old designs. Some of them are dated, but others. She trailed off, then smiled. Dr. Twist says I need to find something that's mine, not Derek's wife, not Mavis and Kellen's mother, just mine. Sounds like good advice. The lease is still in my name. The landlord said if I can make the back payments, I can have it again. She laughed. Of course, I don't have any money. Derek's assets are frozen pending the trial, and what little I had in our joint account is gone. I'm living off what my mother can spare. Stones wanted to offer help, but he knew she wouldn't take it. This was her journey, her reclamation. All he could do was witness it. You'll figure it out, he said instead. You're stronger than you think. Funny, that's exactly what you said at the red light. Lauren checked her watch. I have to go, picking up Kellen from school. He refuses to take the bus now, says the other kids stare at him. She started to walk away, then turned back. Stones, thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. He watched her cross the parking lot toward an older sedan, her mother's car, probably. No more Escalades, no more mansion, no more pretending, just a woman learning to stand on her own feet again. His phone buzzed, his handler, trial prep meeting at 2, don't be late. Stone started his car, but before he pulled out, he saw Lauren sitting in her borrowed sedan, hands on the steering wheel, not moving. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying, but she was also smiling. 3 months felt like 3 years. Lauren stood in the tiny apartment in Brookside, folding laundry while Dr. Twist's voice came through the phone speaker. Twice weekly therapy had become her lifeline, the only thing keeping her tethered to sanity as her old life disintegrated. How did the meeting with the lawyer go? Dr. Twist asked. Marshall Vance seems competent, aggressive. He says the divorce should be straightforward since Derek's currently in federal custody. Lauren paired socks, Kellen's, Mavis's, her own. Such a simple task, but it was hers. He also says I'm entitled to some of the legitimate assets. The house, the cars, anything purchased before the criminal enterprise started. And how do you feel about that? Lauren paused, holding one of Derek's old dress socks that had somehow made it into their escape boxes. I don't want anything from him, not the house, not the money, nothing. I just want my name back, my life back. Lauren, taking what you're legally entitled to isn't the same as being dependent on him. You have 2 children to support. I know, Marshall said the same thing. She threw the sock in the trash. But every piece of that life feels contaminated now, like it's all built on lies and suffering. Through the thin apartment walls, she could hear Mavis on the phone with a friend, voice low and angry. The girl had barely spoken to Lauren since the arrest, too furious that her mother hadn't known, hadn't protected them, hadn't left sooner. Kellen was worse. He stopped speaking almost entirely, just nodded or shook his head when directly questioned. His school counselor said he was depressed, recommended medication, more therapy, just another bill Lauren couldn't afford. I reconnected with an old friend, Lauren said, changing the subject. Gwyneth, we went to college together. I haven't seen her in almost 6 years. How did that feel? Awkward at first. She kept apologizing for not staying in touch and I kept apologizing for disappearing, but then we just talked, like no time had passed. Lauren smiled at the memory. She owns a boutique in Oklahoma City now, does custom work for corporate clients. When I told her about Lauren and Lace, she offered to partner with me, help me restart. That's wonderful, Lauren. It is, it really is, but her smile faded. Except I can't afford the back lease payments, can't afford supplies. Can't afford anything, and I refuse to take money from my mother, she's already housing us. One step at a time, Dr. Twist reminded her gently. You've made incredible progress, you left, you're in therapy, you're rebuilding relationships, the business will come. After the call ended, Lauren sat on her second-hand couch and opened her laptop. The divorce papers Marshall had sent over stared back at her. All she had to do was sign, serve them to Derek through his lawyer and wait. Simple, clean, over. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. 16 years of marriage ended with a digital signature. 2 kids who'd never fully understand why their family exploded. a future so uncertain it terrified her. But then she remembered Derek's hand around her throat 3 months ago, remembered the black eye that had finally made Stones speak up. Remembered every cruel word, every calculated isolation, every dream he'd crushed under the weight of his control. She signed the papers. The next morning, Lauren drove to the federal detention center where Derek was being held pending trial. Marshall had said she didn't have to deliver the papers in person, but something in her needed this confrontation, needed to look him in the eye one last time. The visiting room was cold, sterile, divided by plexiglass. Derek appeared in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller somehow without his expensive suits and commanding presence. But his eyes, though, still held that calculating cruelty. He picked up the phone on his side. Lauren picked up hers. "Come to your senses," he said, smiling that smile that used to make her stomach drop. "Ready to remember which side your bread is buttered on." Lauren slid the divorce papers against the glass. "Sign them." His smile faltered. "You think you're going to survive without me? You think you're going to raise those kids in some dumpy apartment on your mother's charity? Better than raising them in a mansion built on poison. You're nothing without me, Lauren. You were nothing when I found you, and you'll be nothing again." He leaned closer to the glass. "A week, maybe 2. Then you'll come crawling back, begging me to fix this mess, and maybe I will if you apologize properly." Lauren stood up. "I'm not coming back, Derek, not in a week, not ever. You can sign the papers or your lawyer can deal with it. Either way, I'm done being afraid of you." She hung up the phone and walked out, leaving him staring after her with an expression she'd never seen before. Confusion. He genuinely couldn't comprehend that she was leaving. Outside, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock her car. But she was smiling too, that same crying and smiling combination she'd worn in the parking lot 3 months ago. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about you serving papers, proud of you, Stones." She saved his number and typed back, "Thank you for starting this, for giving me permission to save myself." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Finally, you always had the power, I just reminded you it was there." That afternoon, Lauren went to Lauren and Lace. The "For Lease" sign was still crooked in the window, the interior still covered in dust and abandoned dreams. But this time Gwyneth was with her, armed with a measuring tape and a tablet full of business plans. "The space is good," Gwyneth said, walking the perimeter. "Great foot traffic, good natural light. If we can negotiate the back payments into the new lease terms, split the overhead costs." Lauren only half listened. She was standing at her old desk looking at that photograph from the grand opening. The woman in that picture seemed like a stranger now, too young, too naive, too unaware of what was coming. But also hopeful, excited, proud of what she'd built. "I want to be her again," Lauren whispered. "What's that?" Gwyneth looked up from her tablet. "Nothing, just thinking out loud." Lauren turned to her friend. "Let's do this, whatever it takes, I'm ready." They spent the next 2 hours planning, budgeting, dreaming. When Lauren finally locked up and headed home, the sun was setting over Cherry Street, painting everything gold. Her phone buzzed again. "Marshall Vance, Derek signed the papers, no contest, divorce will be final in 60 days. 60 days, 2 months until she was legally free." Lauren stood on the sidewalk outside her shuttered boutique and let herself feel it all, the grief, the relief, the terror, the hope. Everything mixed together in a way that didn't make sense but somehow felt exactly right. Behind her, through the brown paper covering the windows, Lauren and Lace waited, not for someone to rescue it, not for permission to exist. Just for her to be ready. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 5 months after Derek's arrest. Lauren was at the boutique, steaming wrinkles out of fabric samples while Gwyneth negotiated with a supplier on speakerphone. They managed to negotiate a payment plan with the landlord, $1,200 a month for 18 months to clear the back rent, plus current lease. It was crushing but manageable if they could land a few corporate clients. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Lauren Brown. Speaking. This is Agent Morrison with the DEA. I'm the lead investigator on the Derek Brown case. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Lauren's stomach dropped. She'd already given her statement months ago, sat through hours of questions about what she knew and when. They'd cleared her of any involvement, assured her she was a victim, not a suspect. So why was the lead investigator calling her now? Of course, she managed, gesturing to Gwyneth that she needed privacy. She stepped into the back storage room. What's this about? We've become aware of some communications between you and Derek over the past few weeks. Letters, phone calls through his lawyer. Lauren's mind raced. Derek had been sending letters, pathetic, manipulative things that swung between threats and love bombing. She ignored all of them, handed them straight to Marshall Vance. I haven't responded to anything, she said quickly. My lawyer has copies of everything. I haven't had any direct contact with Derek since I served the divorce papers. We know that's not why I'm calling, Morrison paused. Mrs. Brown, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest. Has Derek mentioned anything about hidden assets, money set aside somewhere, properties in other names? No, why? Because we've frozen everything we can find, but the numbers don't add up. A drug operation that size should have generated significantly more wealth than what we've recovered. We believe Derek has money hidden somewhere, possibly offshore accounts or properties in shell company names. Lauren leaned against the storage shelves. What does that have to do with me? If you were to have access to those assets, even unknowingly, a bank account in your name, property deeds, investment accounts, you could be implicated as an accessory. The prosecution is building their case, and they're looking for any loose ends. The threat was clear, they still didn't fully trust her. I don't have access to anything, Lauren said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm living in my mother's apartment. I'm working out of a boutique I can barely afford to rent. Does that sound like someone sitting on hidden millions? No, which is why I'm calling you instead of bringing you in for questioning. Morrison's tone softened slightly, but I need you to be careful. Derek's lawyer has been pushing for conjugal visits, requesting that you be added to his approved contact list. If he reaches out, if he tries to tell you about accounts or asks you to do anything, move money, contact certain people, access safety deposit boxes, you need to tell us immediately. I'll never speak to him again. I hope that's true, but men like Derek Brown are experts at manipulation. They know exactly what buttons to push. A pause. Your divorce is almost final, correct? 3 more weeks. Good, once that's done, you're legally separated from his financial situation, makes our job easier and makes you safer. Morrison cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Stone's Trippier has requested permission to contact you. He wanted to check on how you're doing, but protocol requires we ask your consent first. Lauren's heart skipped. She hadn't heard from Stone since that text message months ago, had assumed he'd moved on to other assignments, other cases. Why does he need permission? Because technically, you're still connected to an ongoing investigation. Any contact between witnesses and agents needs to be documented. Morrison sounded almost apologetic. It's bureaucratic nonsense, but those are the rules. Tell him yes, he can contact me whenever he wants. After the call ended, Lauren stood in the storage room trying to process everything. Even now, even divorced and cleared, Derek's shadow still reached her. The possibility that she might somehow be implicated, that the life she was rebuilding could be destroyed by money she didn't know existed. Her phone buzzed again. Stone's. Hey, he said when she answered. Morrison said you approved contact, hope I'm not bothering you. You're not. Lauren found herself smiling despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Actually, your timing is perfect. I just had a very unsettling conversation with your boss. About the hidden assets, it wasn't a question. Yeah, that's part of why I wanted to talk to you. Lauren's smile faded. What do you mean? Can we meet somewhere private? This isn't really a phone conversation. 20 minutes later, Lauren sat across from Stone's in a coffee shop on Brookside. He looked different out of the driver's uniform, jeans, plain t-shirt, the kind of normal that made him blend into any crowd. She supposed that was the point for an undercover agent. I'm going to be straight with you, Stone said, stirring sugar into his coffee. Derek been talking. Not to the prosecutors, he's not that stupid, but to other inmates, to his lawyer, to anyone who'll listen. And what he's saying is that you knew everything. That you were his partner, not his victim. Lauren felt the blood drain from her face. That's a lie. I know, the evidence proves it's a lie, but lies have a way of becoming truth if they're repeated enough times. He leaned forward. Derek's playing a long game here. If he can convince people you were involved, it creates reasonable doubt for his own case. Makes you look like the mastermind who set him up. That's insane. I had no idea about any of it until he was arrested. Again, I know, but the prosecution is worried. They want to be absolutely certain there's no connection they've missed. No paper trail that ties you to the drug operation. Lauren's hands shook around her coffee cup. So what do I do? You cooperate fully. If Derek contacts you, and he will try, you document everything and report it immediately. If you remember anything, no matter how small, about his business dealings, you tell Morrison. Stones paused. And if by some chance you do know about hidden assets, you need to come forward now, before it's too late. I don't know anything. Lauren's voice rose, drawing looks from other customers. She lowered it. I was a wife. A mother. I ran a boutique until he made me close it. I went to charity galas and smiled for photos. That was my entire world. I believe you, and the way he said it, Lauren knew he meant it. But belief isn't enough in federal court. We need to be proactive here. Meaning what? Stones pulled out a small device, looked like a pen, but Lauren recognized it from TV shows. A recording device. If Derek does reach out, we need to document it, every word, every implication. Build a case that proves he's trying to manipulate you, not that you're his accomplice. Lauren stared at the recorder. You want me to wear a wire? Only if he contacts you, only if there's something to record. Stones pushed it across the table. This is your choice, Lauren, but I won't lie to you, this protects you as much as it helps us. She picked up the device, turned it over in her hands. 5 months ago, she'd been too terrified to speak up. Now she was being asked to actively participate in taking down her own husband. Ex-husband, she corrected herself, in 3 weeks officially. Okay, she said finally, I'll do it, whatever you need. Stones nodded. One more thing, be careful who you trust. Derek has connections, business partners, people who owe him favors. Some of them are still out there, and they're not happy about the operation being shut down. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying be aware, change your routines, don't go places alone at night, watch for anyone following you. He pulled out a card with a phone number. This reaches me directly, any time, day or night, something feels wrong, you call. Lauren took the card, added it to the one already in her wallet, the one he'd given her months ago that she'd never thrown away. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for then, for now. You're doing all the hard work, I'm just trying to make sure you survive it. Lauren almost became another statistic, someone who disappeared into silence. If you've ever felt trapped or known someone who needed saving, hit like and subscribe to this channel. These stories matter because real people are living them right now, and awareness is the first step to change. The message came through Marshall Vance at 8 p.m. on a Friday. Lauren was home with Mavis and Kellen, attempting a normal family dinner, takeout pizza, and a movie they could all agree on. Mavis had finally started talking to her again, small conversations that felt like fragile peace treaties. Kellen still barely spoke, but he'd started eating meals with them instead of hiding in his room. Progress, slow, painful progress. Her phone lit up with Marshall's name. She almost ignored it. Lawyers calling on Friday nights was never good news, but something made her step into the kitchen and answer. Lauren, I need you to listen carefully. Marshall's voice was tight. Derek's lawyer just contacted me. He's requesting an emergency meeting with you tomorrow morning. Says Derek has information about asset recovery that could benefit you and the children. Absolutely not, I'm not meeting with him. That's what I told them, but Lauren, they're threatening to subpoena you. Claim you have knowledge of hidden accounts and are refusing to cooperate with asset recovery. Lauren gripped the counter. That's exactly what Agent Morrison warned me about, it's a setup. I agree, which is why I think we should take the meeting, but on our terms. recorded with me present at the federal building with DEA oversight. You want me to walk into a room with Derek. I want you to call his bluff, show the prosecution that you have nothing to hide and he's the one playing games." Marshall paused. Morrison already agreed to it. "They'll have the room wired, agents watching through one-way glass. You'll be completely safe." Safe? Lauren almost laughed. She'd never be safe from Derek, not really. Men like him didn't let go just because you signed papers and moved on. "When?" she asked quietly. "Tomorrow 10 a.m., I'll pick you up at 9:30. After hanging up, Lauren stood in the kitchen, listening to her kids laugh at something in the movie. That sound, genuine laughter in her home, had been absent for so long, she'd do anything to protect it. She texted Stones, "Meeting with Derek tomorrow. Marshall and DEA will be there, should I be worried?" His response came immediately, "I'll be there too, behind the glass, you won't be alone." The federal building downtown was all concrete and security checkpoints. Lauren passed through metal detectors, surrendered her phone and purse, let herself be led through corridors that all looked the same. Marshall walked beside her, briefcase in hand, radiating professional calm. Agent Morrison met them outside interview room 3. "We've got audio and video recording. I'll be monitoring from the observation room with Agent Trippier. If at any point you feel unsafe or want to stop, just say the word Marshall twice. We'll end it immediately." Lauren nodded, not trusting her voice. The door opened. Derek sat at a metal table, hands cuffed in front of him, orange jumpsuit making him look washed out under the fluorescent lights. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, sat beside him, yellow legal pad at the ready. Derek smiled when he saw Lauren, that same smile he'd used when they first met, when he'd promised her the world and delivered a prison instead. "Thank you for coming," he said like she'd had a choice. "You look good, thin but good." "Let's skip the pleasantries," Marshall said, taking the seat across from Derek. Lauren sat beside him, keeping the table between her and her almost ex-husband. "Your lawyer said you have information about marital assets. We're here to listen." Derek leaned back, chains rattling. "I've been thinking a lot these past few months. About mistakes I made, things I should have done differently, and I realized something: Lauren deserves to be taken care of. The kids deserve security." "Touching," Marshall said flatly, "the information. There are accounts offshore in the Caymans, set up in Lauren's name for tax purposes." Derek's eyes never left Lauren's face. "About $4 million, give or take, she should have access to them." Lauren felt the room tilt. "That's a lie, I never opened any offshore accounts." "You didn't have to, I had power of attorney, used your social security number, your passport information." He smiled wider. "It's all perfectly legal. Spousal asset protection, my lawyer can provide the documentation." Patricia Chen slid papers across the table. Marshall grabbed them before Lauren could, scanning quickly. "This is a trap," Lauren said, looking at Marshall. "He's trying to make it look like I was involved." "Or," Derek interrupted, "I'm trying to make sure my wife and children are provided for while I'm away. The accounts are legitimate. The money came from my petroleum business before any of the other issues came up. It's clean." "Nothing about you is clean," Lauren said, and the venom in her voice surprised even her. Derek's smile finally cracked. "Still angry about the divorce? I signed your papers, Lauren, gave you what you wanted. And now I'm giving you $4 million. Most ex-wives would say thank you. Most ex-wives weren't married to drug dealers who beat them." The room went silent. Patricia Chen stopped writing. Derek's face darkened. "I never beat you, don't you dare sit there and rewrite history." His voice dropped to that dangerous quiet Lauren knew too well. "I gave you everything. The house, the clothes, the life everyone envied. And this is how you repay me, abandoning me the second things got difficult. You're a criminal, you deserve to be abandoned." Derek lunged forward, chains stopping him short. "You self-righteous." "Mr. Brown," Patricia grabbed his arm, "sit down now." But Derek wasn't done. "You think you're better than me, you think living in that pathetic apartment makes you noble. You were nothing before me, Lauren. A girl with a sewing machine and delusions. I made you into someone." "No," Lauren stood up and her voice didn't shake. "You made me into nothing. You took everything I was and crushed it until I forgot my own name, but I remember now, and I'm rebuilding everything you destroyed. With what money, on what foundation? Derek rattled his chains, gesturing at the papers. Take the accounts, Lauren, take the money. Because without me, you're going to fail. That boutique you're so proud of, it'll be bankrupt in 6 months. You'll come crawling back just like I knew you would. Marshall, Lauren said clearly. Marshall. The door opened immediately. Agent Morrison stepped in. We're done here. We're not done, Derek shouted as guards appeared to escort him out. Lauren, listen to me. This is your last chance. Take the money. I don't want anything from you, Lauren said, and she meant every word. Not your money, not your name, not your shadow over my life. You can keep it all. She walked out, leaving Derek shouting behind her. In the hallway, her knees buckled and Marshall caught her arm. Breathe, he said quietly, just breathe. Stones appeared from the observation room, concern etched across his face. You okay? Those accounts Lauren managed, are they real? We're checking now, Agent Morrison said, but my guess, yes, they're real and yes, they're a trap. He set them up in your name so if we find them, it looks like you were his financial partner. But I didn't know. We know that, the recordings prove it, you just gave us exactly what we needed. Derek on tape admitting he created accounts in your name without your knowledge or consent. Morrison almost smiled. You did good in there. Marshall squeezed her shoulder. The divorce will be final Monday. After that, anything in his name or connected to his criminal enterprise can't touch you legally. What about the $4 million? Lauren asked, adding that she was even thinking about it. $4 million could solve every problem, save the boutique, secure her kids' futures. It's evidence now, Morrison said. Fruit of the poisonous tree, even if it was legally placed in your name, it came from drug money. It'll be seized and forfeited to the government. Lauren nodded, relief flooding through her. She didn't want Derek's money, didn't want anything that tied her to that life. Can I go home now? She asked. Yeah, Stone said gently, you can go home. 8 months later. The Florida sun felt different than Oklahoma heat, softer somehow, filtered through palm trees instead of beating down on endless plains. Lauren stood on the small balcony of her Clearwater apartment, coffee in hand, watching Mavis and Kellen walk toward the beach with boogie boards under their arms. Her kids laughing, running free. It had taken time to get here, so much time. The divorce had finalized on schedule. Derek had been sentenced to 25 years federal prison with no possibility of parole. His assets, the mansion, the cars, the legitimate businesses, had been liquidated to pay restitution to his victims. Lauren had received a small settlement, enough to relocate and start over, but nothing close to the life she'd left behind. She didn't want that life anyway. Dr. Twist had supported the move to Florida, said sometimes healing required physical distance from trauma. Lauren had chosen Clearwater because she'd vacationed there once as a teenager, remembered the white sand beaches and the way the sunset turned the Gulf into liquid gold. It seemed like a good place to remember who she used to be. Lauren and Lace had relocated too, operating now as an online boutique with a small warehouse space in Tulsa managed by Gwyneth. They'd landed 3 corporate clients in the past month, tech companies wanting custom pieces for their executives. The money wasn't extravagant, but it was hers, clean, earned through talent instead of lies. Her phone buzzed, a text from Stones, how's paradise? She smiled and typed back, missing the Oklahoma humidity, how's desk duty treating you? Boring as predicted, but trial prep keeps me busy. Derek's lawyer is trying every trick to reduce his sentence. Good luck with that. They texted occasionally, brief check-ins, updates on the case, the kind of distant friendship that came from shared trauma. He'd been reassigned after the trial concluded, no longer undercover, working regular DEA cases from the Tulsa office. Living a normal life, he'd told her, whatever that meant. Lauren went inside to get ready for work. Her office was the second bedroom, converted into a design studio with a sewing machine, fabric samples, and a bulletin board covered in sketches. She had a video call with a potential client at 10, a law firm in Dallas wanting custom blazers for their female attorneys. But before she could sit down, her doorbell rang. She opened it to find a delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of wildflowers. Lauren Brown. That's me. These are for you. She signed for them, confused. The card read, "Congratulations on your first big contract, knew you could do it, G." Gwyneth, always looking out for her, even from 800 miles away. Lauren was arranging the flowers in a vase when the doorbell rang again. This time it was her neighbor, a kind, older woman named Mrs. Patterson, who'd adopted Lauren's family the moment they'd moved in. "I hope I'm not interrupting, dear, but I wanted to invite you and the kids to dinner tomorrow night. My son Roman is visiting from Tampa, and I thought it might be nice for you to meet some people, make some connections." Lauren hesitated. She'd been so focused on work and therapy and keeping her kids stable that she hadn't thought about socializing. Making friends, building a life beyond survival. "That's very kind," she started. "It's just dinner, nothing fancy. Roman's a high school history teacher, divorced, very normal and boring." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "I promise I'm not trying to set you up, just thought you might like some adult conversation that doesn't involve fabric swatches." Lauren laughed. "Okay, we'd love to come." The video call with the Dallas law firm went better than expected. They wanted 50 custom blazers, paid half up front. Lauren hung up and immediately called Gwyneth, who screamed so loud Lauren had to pull the phone away from her ear. "This is it," Gwyneth shouted. "This is the contract that puts us in the black. We still have a long way to go." "Stop, just stop and be happy for 2 seconds. You did this, Lauren, you rebuilt from nothing." After they hung up, Lauren sat at her sewing machine and let herself cry. Happy tears this time, proud tears. The kind that came from looking back at where you'd been and marveling that you survived the journey. Her therapy session that afternoon was via video with Dr. Twist, who'd agreed to continue their work remotely. They talked about the contract, about Mavis starting to trust again, about Kellen finally opening up in his own therapy sessions. "How are you sleeping?" Dr. Twist asked. "Better, most nights I make it through without nightmares." "And the hypervigilance, the checking locks multiple times." Lauren paused, still there, but less urgent. "I'm working on it." "You're doing remarkable work, Lauren. 6 months ago you could barely leave the house. Now you're running a business, raising 2 kids, building a whole new life. Some days I still can't believe this is real, like I'm going to wake up and still be in that mansion, still be trapped." "That's normal, trauma doesn't disappear overnight, but you're healing, that's what matters." The next evening, Lauren and her kids walked down the hall to Mrs. Patterson's apartment. Mavis had actually put on a dress without being asked. Kellen had combed his hair, small victories. Mrs. Patterson's son Roman opened the door, and Lauren's first thought was that he had kind eyes. Not flashy or intimidating, just genuinely kind. He was tall, maybe 45, with graying temples and laugh lines that suggested he smiled often. "You must be Lauren," he said, extending his hand. "My mom told me all about you, the fashion designer from Oklahoma." "Boutique owner," Lauren corrected, "much less glamorous." Dinner was easy. Roman asked about her work with genuine interest, shared funny stories about his students, talked to Mavis and Kellen like actual people instead of decorative children. He didn't pry about her past, didn't ask why a single mother had relocated to Florida alone. He just listened when she talked and filled comfortable silences with comfortable conversation. After dinner, while Mrs. Patterson showed Mavis and Kellen her vintage record collection, Roman and Lauren ended up on the balcony with coffee. "Mom said you're recently divorced," Roman said carefully. "Me too, 3 years now, it gets easier." "Does it?" Lauren asked. "The hard parts do, learning to trust again, that takes longer." He stared at the darkening sky. "But eventually you wake up and realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're actually living." Lauren thought about that, about the boutique, the beach, the wildflowers on her table, about Mavis laughing again, Kellen talking again. About sleeping through the night without checking every lock twice. "Yeah," she said softly, "I think I'm getting there." Later, walking back to her apartment with sleepy kids in tow, Lauren's phone buzzed. A text from Stones. "Forgot to mention Derek's final appeal was denied. he's officially done, it's over. It's over. She stood in her doorway reading those words again and again. The legal battle, the fear, the constant looking over her shoulder, all of it finally done. Mavis tugged her sleeve. Mom, you okay? Lauren looked at her daughter, 16, strong, healing. Looked at Kellen behind her, actually making eye contact for the first time in weeks. Yeah, baby, I'm more than okay. She tucked them both into bed, kissed their foreheads, and stood in the hallway listening to their breathing. Then she walked to her balcony and looked out at the Gulf of Mexico stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere in Oklahoma, Stones was probably filing paperwork, living his quiet life. Somewhere in a federal prison, Derek was realizing his empire was truly gone. Somewhere in Tulsa, Gwyneth was packing custom blazers to ship to Dallas. And here in Clearwater, Lauren Brown was standing on her own balcony in her own apartment, breathing free air. She pulled out her phone and texted Stones, "Thank you for the whisper that changed everything." His response came quickly, "You changed everything, I just reminded you that you could." Lauren smiled and looked back inside at her small apartment, shabby furniture, kids' shoes by the door, design sketches covering every surface. It wasn't the mansion, it wasn't luxury or status or the life everyone had envied. It was hers, completely, utterly, beautifully hers. And that made it perfect. Lauren's journey from that mansion to this balcony took courage most of us can't imagine. If her story moved you, if it reminded you that healing is possible, that starting over isn't failure but bravery, subscribe to this channel. Because somewhere right now, someone needs to hear that they deserve better too. Your subscription helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Don't just watch, be part of the change.